It was 2 weeks into the lockdown, and I was managing quite well, to be honest. I was living on my own in my house. I had a shop at the end of my road to get my supplies, so it was quite good. Most of the days I just sat there watching Netflix or TV and just chilling. So just like any other night, I got into bed around 10 PM, sat on my phone for a bit, and then I went to sleep. Little did I know, it would be the scariest and worst night of my life. I drifted off to sleep, but I was awoken. It sounded like my doorbell going off. And then, knocking as well. Didn't know what was going on. Was there somebody outside? I got up and looked out of my window, to which I saw 5 or 6 people standing there, staring up at the window. They said, "Come on out." I thought it was peculiar. What the hell was going on? There was a load of people standing on my driveway. But then I heard a chainsaw. There was just tons and tons of random noises coming from in my garden, and it just kept on getting even stranger. I didn't know what this was, but it was creepy as hell. I decided to call the police. But when they answered, it said, "Go away." I thought that was a very strange message for the police to be sending out, almost not real. Now there was even more sound. Almost sounded like a car crash, just clusters of sound. But these people were still standing there, staring at me. Then, they all held out their hands. Join us. It almost sounded like they said, "Join us." Join them to what though? I was so confused. But then it hit me. The weird police call, random people, really random sounds. I must have been in a dream. Some kind of crazy lucid dream, because this couldn't be happening. So, as I realised this, I thought, why not? So I went downstairs, opened the door, and went outside. Everybody out there, they started clapping and cheering at me. They said, "Welcome." It sounded like they said, "Welcome." Then, a woman from the front stepped forward and came up to me. She took down her hood. She was an old woman, quite tall though, and she was wearing a red bow tie and little glasses. She came up to me and whispered in my ear, "Get out of here now, while you can." I said, "No, it's fine, it's just a dream." She just stared at me dead in the eye and slowly shook her head, not saying yes, but not saying no. Nevertheless, it was creepy, so I ran back inside, locked the door and got into bed. I thought to myself before I went to sleep, am I in hell? Am I dead? Maybe I'm dead or in hell. At this point, I really was convinced I was dead. The whole situation was peculiar, but in the hope that it was a dream, I went to sleep. I woke up in the morning and I looked out of the window. Nobody was there, no sounds, no car crash. There was nothing. I put what happened last night down to a bad dream. It was terrifying, but it was some kind of crazy, realistic lucid dream. I mean, it must have been. So, at around 11 in the morning, I went down to the local shop, like I do every day, to get my supplies. But, on the till, was a woman. She was wearing a red bow tie and had small glasses on. I gave her my food and my stuff to pay for. And I looked at her almost, "I recognise you." She said, "Hello again." I was terrified. I said, "What do you mean, hello again?" She said, "I saved you last night." I said, "No, this can't be. I had a bad dream last night, and someone looked just like you." She said, "No, sweetie, that was me." I was dead confused now. I took my shopping and I left the shop. I ran all the way back home and just sat there and thought about the whole situation. The next few nights, nothing happened. It's been weeks now, and I've not seen those people or heard any weird sounds. I have no clue what happened that night. Was it a crazy lucid dream? But how would that woman have known me? How would she have recognised me at the shop? I'll never know. But to that woman, if you're out there, and you did save me, thank you. Me and my mum and dad all lived together. Just before the lockdown, we'd moved into a new house. But when the lockdown was in force, we couldn't get any new furniture or anything. So we were stuck in the new house with just sleeping bags and minimal essentials to get us by. It wasn't great, but we were coping. After about 3 days of the lockdown, things started getting very, very strange. I started hearing things at night time, coming from almost under the ground. It was really creepy, and I had no idea what it was. My parents were hearing it as well, and it was keeping us awake all night. So we called the ex-house owners and said, "Do you know anything about weird sounds like under the ground at night?" They said, no. But they didn't say it confidently, almost like they knew something. So the next night, just like any other night, got into our sleeping bags and tried to get some sleep. But again. At this point, I was very angry now. So I got up and walked around the house to see if I could find anything. It carried on. But then I saw something that I didn't even realise was in the house. There was a door. It led to a basement. I got a torch, turned it on, and walked down there. The sound was even louder now. I walked over to it. But as I turned the corner, it stopped. There was no sound. The room was dead silent. I went back upstairs to my parents and said, "Mum, Dad, there's a basement. I never realised we had one." They said, "What? Really?" I took them down there and showed them. But all of the sounds had stopped now. We ignored it and we just went back up to bed. But straight away, it came again. I really couldn't be bothered to get back up again, but I knew I had to. So I got the torch and I went back down there. But as soon as I got down there was no sound. But then I saw something. A Ouija board on the floor, perfectly intact. It was creepy. I called my parents and they came down and had a look. They confirmed it was a Ouija board, but it was ancient. The next day, we looked up the serial number of this Ouija board. We found out it was made in 1960. We thought this was very strange, and we also now wanted to look up the history of the house. So I looked up if anything weird happened in this house. And sure enough, it did. And it wasn't even one thing, it was two. When the house was built 50, 60 years ago, builders were in here, and they were crushed by falling debris and died. For 10 years, this house was abandoned, and kids came here and played a Ouija board. They died, unexpectedly and mysteriously, in the basement. We were shocked, but sure enough, after that day, we never heard anything again. It's been 2 or 3 weeks now, and we still haven't heard anything from that basement. But we always keep the door locked. It was 1 week into the 2020 coronavirus lockdown. I was living on my own, but I was also considered as a key worker as I worked as a mechanic fixing ambulances. Every day, to get to and from work, I'd get the tube or the underground. Most days there were roughly 10 to 15 people on the tube. However, this day was very different. I got up just like any other day, around 6 AM, got on the tube and went to work. It was fairly busy in the morning, everybody rushing to work. Once I got to work, had a good day, but then I went home and things got very strange. I got to the station and got on the subway, but there was literally nobody on it. I always come home at exactly the same time, and as I said, there's always around 10-15 people. But no, not one person, just me. And for some reason the lights on the tube, they didn't look the same, they were flickering and not working very well. It was peculiar. I went for about 3 or 4 stops and nobody got on. Not one person got on the train. I walked all the way down the carriages to see if there was anybody else. No one. Then, at around the 6th stop, somebody did get on. A tall man wearing a hood. I couldn't see his face because it was so dark and his hood was so big. He came up to me and he said, "Please, may I sit here?" I said, yeah, sure, it's fine. Just thinking it was some normal guy. Then he said, "How are you?" I said, "I'm good, thank you. You?" He said, "Yes." Then he came straight out and said, "Can I come home with you?" I said, no, what do you mean?" He said, "Yes, I'm coming with you." I still couldn't see his face. I was terrified now. He said, "I'm coming home with you, whether you like it or not." I said, "No, you're not. You're really not coming home with me. I'm sorry, sir." But then he stated my correct address. Luckily, it was my stop now. I looked at the man in terror and I ran as fast as I possibly could off the train. Luckily, the station was right next to my house, so I could just run as fast as I could all the way back home, which I did. I arrived back home, and to my horror, the man was standing on my front porch. He didn't say or do anything. He didn't turn around, and he didn't say anything to me. I thought, I need to get in my house before this man does. So I snuck round to the back of my house and went through the back door. I looked out of the window, and the man was still standing there, not moving. I went up to my room and just carried on staring out the window and monitored him. Then he moved. He started knocking on my door. And then he rang the doorbell. I plucked up the courage and shouted at the window, "What the hell do you want? Why have you followed me home? How did you get my address?" The man didn't reply. He carried on knocking. But then, things turned for the worse. That was when I heard my door swing open. Then I heard footsteps all around my corridor. He was walking in my house. I thought my only option was to call the police. So I dialed in the number and I said, "Help me, there's someone in my house, I've got an intruder." I said the address and they said they were on their way. I stayed hidden in my room. And then the man walked in. He stared at me. He said, "I told you I was going to come home with you." I said, "What the hell are you doing? Why are you in my house? What do you want?" He just laughed, turned around and walked back down the corridor. Then the police turned up. But when they did a search of the house, there was no one to be seen. The man was not there. He was gone, vanished. The police were convinced it was just a false alarm and they left. It's been 3 weeks since that day now, and I still have no idea if that was a real man or if it was something more sinister.